What is up, everyone? Welcome to the first episode of Step Back with Myles and Owen. I am here with Myles Ehrlich and Kevin Kdot Lewis in the house. We're excited. This is we're like we said in our introductory announcement about Step Back. We're just going to be feeling stuff out and seeing what works and what doesn't. So we are literally pressing record here and we're just going to chop it up about week one of the WNBA season. We are 1 week in, and it's been a phenomenal week. There's so much to discuss. We're going to be very loose with the structure here, just kind of jump around and talk about feelings, talk about vibes. Like what jumped out to you in week one of the 2024 WNBA season? Myles, what you got?
So first thing I want to talk about, Liberty 4-0 start. And the schedule was solid for them, even though it was 4 games in 7 days. They started with the Mystics, who people are down on. I'm not as down on the Mystics as a lot of people, and I'm sure we can circle back to that. But anytime you have 2 probable Olympians and a player in Brittany Sykes that is an all-star, I think like that just maybe just says more about the quality of this league 1 through 12 and how talented everybody is. But then back-to-back wins over the Fever in both of their respective home openers. And then catching the Storm last night at the perfect time, which is both early in the season before they built up chemistry and on the third leg of a 3 cities and 4 night road trip where they started with a double overtime. So like everything schedule wise has landed well for the Liberty. But what I want to talk about and highlight is the play of Betnijah Laney-Hamilton, because B, for so long, and not because of the 3 of us on this call, does not get her flowers. But B is just constantly after it on the defensive end. And there's just a lot of talk about how she's able to be aggressive like that because she's got Stewie and JJ behind her as secondary defenders. But there's so much that goes into scheming for Sandy Brondello and this staff that is possible because of Betnijah. Because yes, we've heard all the talks about perimeter defense and what the Liberty need to do to beat the Aces. And I think that B gets kind of folded into all of that. But they would have lost the opening game of the season if not for that fourth quarter from Betnijah. So yeah, I wanted to bring that to the table, see if you guys had any thoughts on B, because I'm sure she's going to come up time and time and time and time and time again.
I have a lot of thought. First off, I just want to say I absolutely love, Liberty beat writer Myles just bringing up the Liberty right away, carrying water for New York, man, so classic. No, I love that you started there because number one, we are in market there, and yeah, Betnijah is phenomenal, man. Like there's something about watching her play in person that hits differently, and I always hate to say that because it's like a lot of people can't get to a game. The prices are going up. There's a lot of reasons, so like I don't want to be excluding anyone by saying this, but you see it. You see her intensity and you see her focus and you see her commitment when you are there in person, whether it's at practice, whether it's in a game. And she is the engine of this team. She is the heartbeat. Jonquel and Breanna Stewart are the best players on the team. That's fairly undeniable. Maybe on a certain night, if Sabrina goes off for 30, 10, and 10, it's her. But like consistently, it's Jonquel Jones and Breanna Stewart at power forward and center holding this team down. But Betnijah, okay, we got Jewel Lloyd tonight. I'm shutting her down. Oh, we got Caitlin Clark, and this building is filled to capacity for everyone to see Caitlin Clark. I'm shutting her down. And offensively, we saw last year that when Betnijah gets comfortable, when Betnijah is aggressive, when Betnijah is looking for hers, New York is flat out better because there is nothing you can do as the defense. If you double, one place, there's a leak somewhere else. And I just love how Betnijah has been getting to her spots in the mid-range, getting to the hoop, the little spin moves, the finishing, the pull-ups from 10, 12, 14 feet. And then, of course, the floor spacing, the three-point shooter. She's just rounded in it's phenomenal to watch because like it somewhat coincides, I think, with when you and I, Myles, really got involved in covering the WNBA. Betnijah's rise to stardom. I'm just gonna say it, like she's a star at this point. Her rise has kind of coincided alongside the timeline of when we were covering this league, because I remember watching Indiana Fever film from 2019 for a story, and Betnijah's coming off the bench, and you can see such good things in her game. You can see the hardworking, just gritty mentality, but the offense wasn't really there. And then 2020 in the bubble in Atlanta, she breaks out offensively. Then she comes to New York. The growth is so stupendous. I'm just searching for different adjectives here to describe it because it's so cool to see. And she landed in a spot that just couldn't be better, where like they absolutely need her at the three. She does everything for them. And yeah, like you said, easy schedule to start for sure. Let's not overreact. But this is what the Liberty did not do in the first half of last season, and they are doing it now. They are taking care of business. So
Yeah.
big props to the Liberty. I think like this is a team that is looking like 100% a title contender who learned from what happened last year in the finals and is going to be back strong.
I want to
Um,
pass it to Kdot, but before we move off B, you were talking about her offense and how she does everything that the Liberty kind of need. And I don't want to just, I feel like sometimes players can be thrown into this, like, we don't even run plays for her. They absolutely run a lot of sets for Betnijah. And there are just so many personalities and so much talent on that team that I think she sometimes will get lost because of so much of the narrative that has been built from big media about who are the offensive contributors. But B, what she does as a steadying force for this team when things are really getting in the mud, when they're forcing passes inside and turning the ball over, or when they're settling for 3-point jump shots, B's ability to get to that mid range you talked about, or to punish mismatches, so much of it is she is closing out on, like you said, on your Caitlins and on your Jules on the perimeter. And what she's doing, it's not just the leak out to the other end and basket hanging, but she's just putting in that early work for a deep seal so that the defense is forced to get back and either switch or need to figure out their matchups. And there are a lot of just like early deep seals for a lot of players that are caused from Betnijah's hustle to that end of the floor. So it's a lot of the little things, even if she's not getting the touches. The fact that you need to make sure that you are never more than a pass away from her because she's a knockdown shooter in those corners. And if you close out from too far away, she's going to give you that little head fake, go to the rim, probably finish with her left hand because she loves doing that. It's just the three-level aspect of all of it just makes B just so dynamic.
we need a advanced stat for the deepest seals, because I swear Jonquel and
AJ.
Betnijah have people pinned like into the stanchion. I need like the second spectrum data for like the best post player sealers. All right, Kdot, if
Wait, I'm
you
just ready. I'm ready to see one play where John Quell catches an entry pass and she's standing out of bounds because she's
hey,
sealed so
well,
far.
I want to like watching the game last night against Seattle. I thought of a question to ask her at practice tomorrow, which is going to be like, do you ever seal someone so deeply that you realize that you're like out of bounds? Because
Yeah.
I swear she will seal someone and then she gets the ball and she just looks up and she's right under the hoop and then she just like kind of like reaches, and it's phenomenal.
Have you
God.
ever tripped over a photographer when you're trying to seal
Yeah.
somebody?
Literally. All right. So, Kdot, either any thoughts on the Liberty or anywhere else in the WNBA you want to go that has stuck out to you here after 7 days of the season?
Well, I do want to just shout out the New York Liberty right quick. I just did a code name Aces for the
Yep.
9450. So like I will leave all of my analysis about the Liberty there, but I do want to give a big shout out to Betnijah Laney and her communication defensively, because she sets the tone defensively from a 9450, no pun intended, standpoint. And the way that she communicates, the way that she's able to tell her teammates when to switch, when to stay home, when to ice, certain, screens at any type of level, whether it was Skylar Diggins-Smith asking for a top of the key screen, or whether it was Jewel Lloyd asking for a screen on the wing. Like, she was just there at every step of the moment. And that was, very, very great to see. And I also want to give credit where credit is due for Sabrina Ionescu. From an offensive standpoint, starting off in the season, we see that she's touching the paint a lot more and actually being more aggressive offensively in the paint more, as opposed to what she was kind of, I wouldn't say she was regulated, but what she was more comfortable with was standing on the outside, shooting those threes off of drags, off of like staggers, or off of just a high pick and roll. But now you see her being insanely more aggressive in the paint. And last night proved that as well. She got like 3 or 4 and ones or just attempts to the bucket. But 2 years ago, I don't know if we say that. Even last year, I don't know if we say that. So I definitely want to give credit to Saab for doing that.
And she's not foul hunting on these drives, which I think last year she was looking for some of that contact. And now it seems like the focus is to finish, and she's absorbing in a way that I think she's just being a lot stronger with the ball. And that floater too, that floater is looking good early. And that's something that she's also been finishing through contact. And we saw some of that last year, but it was more of those like short pull-ups that just, if you aren't going to have that lift, and then you're getting that second level closing out, you're not going to be able to really get a good look at the rim. So yeah, I think that we've seen growth from her every single season. And on the defensive end, last night, Sandy Brondella was pretty complimentary of what Sab's doing there too. I think that's something else that I do want to see against more opponents, because Washington, they definitely struggled on the perimeter. But Sabrina, they've also hid her a bit. She's gotten a couple of Samuelsons to start, and then a very, very tired Seattle team in game 4. But early returns look pretty good for a team that hears the noise as much as they want to pretend that they don't. It's a team that hears the noise. But let's move on. I got something else, unless you've got something you want to jump to next.
Do it.
All right. So the teams that we expected to be struggling at the start, but still be really, really fun, are maybe struggling at the start and are still really fun. I talked about Washington at the top, but LA, you see the vision already. Dearica Hamby is where I want to go next, because Dearica obviously well documented everything that she went through last year, but for her to play an entire season after giving birth right before the season started, part of it almost felt like a couple of years back when Odyssey Sims was like, okay, I was written off as going to be out of the season because I was having a baby, and then stubbornly, I think she came back and she's like, no, I'm going to prove, just because you said I wouldn't be playing the season, I'm going to come back and do it. I think Dearica played last season with a lot to prove. That was maybe internalized, but man, she has room to run on this team, and it is a young, exciting squad that wants to run with her and wants to get out and push. And Cam Brink seems like a really, really good complementary piece to Dearica too. The two of them are just nightmare mismatches for any big tandem in the league, because they've got the length, they've got the athleticism, and you don't always know what they want to do in the open court. And I think that's just, they obviously need to develop some chemistry and add some more pieces around the perimeter. But that is a really, really nice foundation for a team that could have been almost like Chicago, that could have been somewhat aimless, but was able to bring back a lottery pick in exchange for a superstar that wanted a new start somewhere else. And it's just got to be really exciting for fans once you get over are we not looking for title expectations this year, to just like really vibe with a fun foundation that's starting there.
I agree. Dearica was where I'm glad you took it there because I wanted to talk. Dearica and the Sky were like two of the main things on the list of what I wanted to get to. And also, I just want to assure everyone we're gonna be in your inbox so heavy. We're gonna be producing so much content. Do not worry if day one we're not talking about your team. Like we're gonna get there for sure. But so the Sparks I haven't been able to lock in on as much as the Sky yet from a basketball standpoint, but what I have seen is exactly what you just attested to. And the thing for me with Dearica that has always been so phenomenal is her ability to run the floor, is what she does to you in transition. Like there is no one better to me in the league. And we saw this in Las Vegas. For years, I was like, why won't Dearica Hamby start over Carolyn Swords? And the reason was because of, other than just obvious reasons, but the main reason was what she opens up for you when your team gets out and runs. And I think that that's a really exciting place for Los Angeles to be, because their goal is not to win games this year. In fact, it is more advantageous for them to lose games this year. But again, as with any team in the early stages of a rebuild, of development, you want to get a lot out of these losses. You want these losses to be productive. And I can't think of a better loss than what Los Angeles had on Saturday against the Aces. And yeah, the Aces are down Chelsea Gray, the best point guard in the league, but they still have Asia Wilson, the best player in the league. They still have Jackie Young, one of the 5-10 best players in the league. They still have Kelsey Plum, one of the 10 best players in the league. That is a really impressive game for Los Angeles to be competitive up until the final few minutes. And Dearica was the best player on the floor for them. She just hustles so hard. She is so good at filling the lane in the middle of the floor. So then when you've got shooters that kind of flare out to the corners, to the wings, the floor is so open in transition. And you get Dearica the ball, she's finishing. She's finishing at the hoop. So I'm super excited. I love the fit with her and Cameron Brink. They should be excited. And well, first off, Kdot, thoughts on anything on the Sparks here?
Yeah, I love that Dearica Hamby is literally doing her thing and making it known that, don't forget about her. Like, don't forget about me. Like, I am still Dearica Hamby. And the biggest thing about the Sparks team that I love is that not only the youth movement, but I just like how they have that mix of kind of like that veteran presence and in that youth. What I would like to see, if we are just going to be hooping all vibes this year, let the youth be the youth, right? Like I want to see more Rickea Jackson minutes. Like Rickea Jackson has literally been a plus for the Sparks like since the very first game, and I just love her productivity when she comes in. So like as far as the Sparks is concerned, like I definitely love this team. This team is absolutely fun to watch, and that just goes to that just credit to all of the teams that are in the league right now, whether you're undefeated or whether you haven't even won a game. Like everybody is excited to watch, but the Sparks in particular, like you both have been saying, are extremely exciting to watch. And I love what Dearica and what Cameron Brink and what Rickea Jackson brings. So it's going to be an exciting it's going to be an exciting season for that team, whether they have a successful year or whether they don't. I mean, that still is still something for us to see, but I'm just loving it, just loving it.
I
Same.
think a great question, Owen, that you asked of on our pods last week on pull up of both Steve and Nikias is like, what does a successful season mean beyond win and loss record for some of these teams? But one thing that you brought up, and I know that there's always that balance of if you're going youth movement, how much push and pull between the vets. But my counter to that is shout out Lasia Clarendon, who started the year with a triple double, and great seeing Lexi Brown back on the court too. The foundation, and for Kurt Miller as a veteran coach, I love that there's this balance of vets, and Dearica goes into that camp as well. Whereas when I look at Indiana and what Indiana is struggling with, I wonder about how many of those vet voices there are in that locker room that can pull Caitlin aside when she's going after the ref in a 1-point game and getting teed up in the fourth quarter. That can tell Aaliyah to keep her head up and keep on shooting, keep doing her thing, because her front court mate, Melissa, is also still a young player in this league. So I understand, like, sometimes you just have to go all in and fully commit to that youth movement. But having those veterans, because we've seen Erica Wheeler be incredibly supportive on social media and just kind of like a light in that locker room. And I think that is one way of leadership to kind of ease that transition to the next level. But I wonder if there are enough of those voices in Indiana, because that, I think, is if you could have your vets also be kind of additional coaches, but a little bit closer in terms of age, in terms of WNBA, what the day-to-day playing experience is like. I think that can be the difference for a team in Indiana that we saw lose a lot of games in the fourth quarter last year. We're seeing that, I think, with Washington, who has more vets now, but they've had a lead going into the fourth quarter of all three of their games against high caliber teams. So yeah, finding that balance is going to be interesting. And that's what I'm looking at for Indy is can they find those vets to have those voices that we are, I think, seeing early on in LA here. Also, LA, I don't know how these players have enough hours in the day, and maybe it's this whole new generation, but they are out, they are booked, they're busy every single day. They were at a Dodgers game last night with Cam and Rakia. Don't look up the video of that first pitch, but throwing out the first pitches at Dodger Stadium. And it just feels like they've been everywhere. And for a sport that has failed its young athletes before, it's pretty awesome to see beyond. And just obviously Angel Reese has been everywhere as well. But LA, shout out to LA. They've done a really good job putting these two first round picks out in the community, these two lottery picks.
I'm excited. I like what Kdot said. Like, what I want from these teams, and I framed it in when we talked with Steven Nikias, shameless plug, on our other show, Pull Up with Myles and Owen. We were talking about it from a framework of like, what is tangible success for teams that are expected to be in the bottom of the standings and are rebuilding and have young players. That's like on the court stuff. That's like X's and O's, which we love, which we're going to be doing a lot of. But I like the idea of, like, if you're a Sparks fan, you're excited for the first time in a minute. Like, it got pretty bleak there. It got bleak. The Derek Fisher era was bleak. The Sparks are an iconic franchise, an original franchise, a legendary franchise, a championship franchise with a bunch of Hall of Famers that then left because the vibes got so bad and because the combination of ownership and coaching and general manager was just not it for a hot minute there. It's just really cool to see the excitement surrounding, and it goes to what you said, Myles, like to see Rakia Jackson and Cameron Brink with Shohei Ohtani at the Dodgers game. Like that's so cool to me. I'd just be super excited. And I want to kind of build off this point of like the vets and the young players, because I think that the last note on the Sparks, and it's not really a note, you already said it. Lasia Clarendon at point guard, Lexi Brown at shooting guard, Rakia Jackson at small forward, Dearica Hamby at power forward, and Cameron Brink at center. That's the lineup, because you have your two cornerstone lottery picks, the second and fourth pick in the draft, surrounded by vets who get it, who know the game so well, who are so smart, who are such leaders, and who are really freaking good right now when they're healthy, which we're seeing and which we should be thankful for. And that leads me into the other team I was really excited to talk about, the Chicago Sky, who already have a win to show for this energy. And it's the same point. Like, first, the off the court stuff, just so sick. The Meg Thee Stallion concert, having Angel be there, making TikToks with Meg, like bringing
the whole team. Yep.
Bringing the whole team, like everyone getting the pictures, like the backstage access, like so freaking cool. I just am so happy for these players. And anytime the noise and the negativity and all the things that are coming with this wild boom that the sport is having, anytime that is like getting me down or whatever, then I just see a picture of like Angel living her best life. I'm like, oh, this is so great. Like it kind of refocuses things perspective wise, which is really fun. But in terms of the basketball of it all, so Chicago opens its season against Dallas. For those who don't know, Dallas was one of the top 4 teams last year, but is opening this season without their best player, Satu Sabali, and other injuries as well. Dallas wins the first game against Chicago, but they go to Dallas for a little bit of a rematch. And Dallas is kind of controlling things. Dallas's other star alongside Satu, Arike Ogunbowale, who's a bucket, who's a legend, 2018 national champion with Notre Dame, the whole 9 yards, just one of the most electric players in the world. She's dicing them up like she does in the first half. And this is an example of a game in which you'd see a lot of young teams be like, fuck it. We're down, 10 at halftime? I don't even remember. But we're getting cooked. We're on the road. It's early. Like, pack it in. Like, this isn't working out. We're gonna lose this game. Not the case. The Teresa Weatherspoon era is underway in Chicago. And if there's one thing I know about Teaspoon, it's that she's gonna have her team playing with heart, with grit, with hustle, with intention. And that second half, to your point, Myles, like, let's shout out the vets here, because the Chicago's got a lot of young players. Chicago's got maybe the most interesting roster in terms of like a hodgepodge of players who are getting their second, their third shot, who were almost out of the league, who were out of the league. So many different players to talk about with Chicago. But I want to start with like the most stable, even player, who I would posit was their best player on Saturday when they won in Dallas, Elizabeth Williams. And these are the type of players, that you need on your team when you've got Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso and the new era, Kennedy Carter, the new era of young rising stars or future stars that you want to kind of show, hey, this is how we do it on a day-to-day basis. This is how we come back on the road and get a win. And Elizabeth Williams, for those who aren't familiar with her game, has been for her entire career one of the best defensive players in the W, but has never like gotten the bump to like people talk about her as like a role player, really good defender, but what she's doing offensively, she's really added to her game. She like her touch has gotten better around the rim. Defensively, she just had Dallas in shambles, like nightmares. Dallas has some of the best bigs in the league, even with the injuries that they have right now. Tierra McCowan, Kalani Brown, like these are really, really tough players to go against. And Elizabeth Williams set the tone. And then you've got the young star national champion, Angel Reese, who's having a rough shooting start to her career, who's got every reason to like be frustrated. No, I'm just going to come in and I'm going to keep coming at you. I'm going to get these offensive rebounds. I'm going to get to the foul line, just do whatever I can. Marina Maybury, I shot 5 for 18, but I'm doing whatever I can to like get my team back in it. And I just loved it, man. Like I think that was my favorite game of the first week of the season, other than Ka going crazy, which I'm sure we'll talk about. That's got to be number one. But Chicago's right behind it. Chicago's number 2, because that was so damn cool to see Teaspoon get her first win as head coach, to see Angel get her first win in the league. And to have that veteran presence, the stabilizing force of Elizabeth Williams, like, hey, we got this. We're good. Like, we're going to grind out some wins. We're going to be tough. This is what we want to see from the fun, young, up-and-coming team. So that was me rambling for too long, but it was exciting. Cool to see the Sparks and the Sky, who had this little rivalry for a while, and then who both had this weird, bleak little period where, for whatever reasons, like it got a little depressing to be a fan for a minute. And both of these teams, the energy is so back, and that's really cool to me.
2 quick shout outs on that, on this back-to-back series between Chicago and Dallas. First one, Natasha Howard broke her foot in that first game and played through the entire game, and played and made some big plays for them, especially down the stretch in that game that Dallas won to start. And then it comes out after the game that she had the broken foot.
Wow.
Like just an absolute baller. And we know Tosh from New York, and we know just how hard she plays and how much she wants to be out there for her teammates. And the other, I mean, you also talked about very, very briefly, because we can really, there's got to be a 30 for 30 about this roster top to bottom. But the one player I want to highlight right now is Diamond DeShields. Seeing
Yes.
Diamond back out there on the court after never being able to play with Dallas last year. But back in Chicago, it must be just such a like a full circle comfortable moment, because her career did not take the trajectory any of us or she was expecting, but to go through the the very severe medical distress that is pretty unique, I think, in terms of the W, or in terms of sports in general, how she had to basically teach herself how to walk again after that surgery off her spine. And like, to see her back out there and playing so well to start is huge. And yeah, like I said, we could talk about Izzy coming back. We could talk about the redeemed team from the Kennedy or the Kaiser perspective, and then everything that Angel has faced in terms of narratively in her career. And then just yeah, having vets like Ewell or Marina to tell Angel to like keep her head up and to just stay in there. Like, this is a team of just kind of lovable underdogs that
Yeah.
I'm
Yes.
very excited to watch all year long, and
Yeah.
led by Teaspoon, right? Like, that is the
It,
perfect. It's a movie.
it's a movie. Like that is some Hollywood ass shit right there. That's wild. Like I'm so glad you mentioned Diamond, because also can we shout out like one of the best friendships in the W, De'Erica and Diamond? Like to have them like be so supportive of each other, and they've both gone through a lot in this space
Yes.
in completely um different ways. Diamond with the medical stuff, De'Erica with what went down with the Aces, which is its own podcast. But for them to be thriving like this and to be so close, is just really beautiful to see. It makes me super happy. It's a movie. It's like you don't get stuff like this in sports organically. That's not like some Hollywood like cliche stuff or whatever. So I think it's so beautiful. To wrap up, I mean, Kdot, where do you want to
Wait,
take
wait,
it? Like,
one more. Sorry, I know I keep doing this, but now I want like a movie trailer of like a montage of Teaspoon just doing that, like the one last heist. Like, we need to like put together a team. And I just want to see them like recruiting everybody like one at a time, just that montage all the way through. That would be tremendous content for the Sky team
we
to put
need we need Teaspoon to recreate Al Pacino's speech in that football movie, Any Given Sunday or whatever.
Oh, any
Like,
given Sunday. Yeah.
like we might need to reach out to the Sky social media team and be like, can we just get it? Because like it's giving movie vibes. Like it's fairly
For sure.
remarkable the level to which this roster, and then they're coalescing and actually like being competitive. It's really cool. All right, we've discussed some of these teams at the bottom of the standings. We discussed New York. Kdot, anyone you want to shout out, talk about, like what stood out to you week one?
So week one, the biggest thing that probably stood out to me is the Minnesota Lynx.
Mm,
You
love
know,
it.
like
Let's go.
let's just talk about the Minnesota Lynx right quick, because first off, I am getting back to my fandom of Courtney Williams. I'm getting back to my fandom of Natisha Heidemann. I am getting way back into my fandom of an old podcast that I used to listen to back when, Asia and Afisha was doing T with A and Fee.
Yeah,
Like, we're talking MVP
let's
vibes.
go.
So
Go.
Minnesota has definitely done something to me in my heart, because I'm like, oh my God, Minnesota. Can Cheryl Reeves say, you got to remember, I coached one of the best dynasties in WNBA history. So don't just forget about us. We're still here. And from the momentum that she's carried in from last season coming into this season, you can definitely tell that there is somewhat of a maybe not loud, but there's definitely a chip on the Lynx shoulders. So they're ready to come in. They're ready to put in work. And the two games versus Seattle kind of prove that. So I am very, very excited for this team. I know that Diamond Miller has another year under her belt, and she has been looking phenomenal. I like that. Again, the acquisitions that they brought in from free agency and via trade with Sika Kone as well, and then with the draft pick of Alyssa Peely, like they look really, really good offensively. The ball is popping for me offensively, and then of course you do have a top MVP candidate last year in Nafisa Collier doing her thing, and she looks like she's back in full form. So like this team is very, very intriguing to me. What do you guys think about the Lynx? Because I know we've talked about the other teams, but the Lynx right now sitting at number 4 in everyone's power rankings, probably if they're not 3 for others. What do you guys think about the Lynx?
Well, we talked about
So
Erica already being another year back after childbirth, and it's the same thing with Fee, and she really has hit the ground running. Is
Mm-hmm.
going to or should win an MVP at some point in her career with just everything that she does. I will say that that double overtime game was chaos, complete
Oh
chaos.
man.
That both of those teams had dozens of opportunities to take that W. Not to take away, but I just don't want to take away from either of them. But it was the most combined or tied for the most. I think there were 38 or 39 steals in that game total. So that is just a ridiculous back and forth. And Owen was making fun of me yesterday when I was watching all of Seattle's turnovers or in the first 3 games as I'm prepping for Liberty pregame. Um, but there was definitely chaos back and forth. Courtney Williams, I want to see as she gets more comfortable there, and I believe that she's going to be huge for them as she was for the Sky last year. But Alana Smith is the
Yes.
trajectory of her career. This is what the WNBA cannot do enough because of the limitations of roster spots. Because she was almost out of the league 2 years ago,
Right.
and I know that she would have probably worked her way back in because of playing for the Opals and just that she still has this enormous pedigree. But she really flipped her career last year and is now starting the year averaging 5 blocks a game. She's just everywhere. She stretches the floor. And when you have her and Fee next to each other, that's just showing a level of dynamic defense that you can switch every action and always still have the advantage on that side of the ball. So I see what the vision is in terms of a team that is just going to muddy it up, just going to put you into hell on that defensive end, throw different looks at you. And how do we keep on letting Cheryl Reeve get away with this is my question. But she's been doing this for a long, long time. Alyssa Peely showed some good stuff in that second game on the offensive end. Defensively is where I do still have questions with her. They were bringing her out high into some actions on the defensive side. So I want to see how either they decide to hand off some of those, or if the guards have to be super aggressive to maintain those switches if she's going to be in drop. Because some teams you come across, the Liberty, for example, will love to put Stewie and JJ into a little pick and roll or pick and pop and attack that action with a big. And Nafisa's gonna be the other person there, maybe trying to defend both. That might be a problem. But then any team with a fast guard in this league, if you think about Shakira Austin and Brittany Sykes in a pick and roll, and how they would maybe defend that. So I that's where I think, especially early on in the year, her minutes, we're gonna have to like watch what she does on that end. But yeah, Diamond Miller, I'm really excited to see what she can do year 2, especially just as a player that can get downhill and is one of the most explosive finishers in the W, I think already. But the ceiling, we can't even see the ceiling there. So just another year of her. it's a fun squad. And a shout out to the sports books that hung the Lynx at 17.5 wins this year. They are already a ninth of the way there in 2 games this season. So good job. Good job to those guys.
I'm glad we're talking about the Lynx here, because it's easy to just, I don't know, it's easy to forget about them up in Minnesota, just playing ball in the post dynasty Maya Moore, Sylvia Fowles, Simone Augustus, Lindsay Whalen era. Like, this team, I hated the framing. Now I'm going to go on a little thing. I promise this can be quick, but I just hated the framing of like, what is Cheryl Reeve doing the last handful of years? Like, yeah, it hasn't been perfect since Maya Moore stepped away from the game. They also won 4 titles in 7 years. Cheryl Reeve, I would make the case, is the greatest coach in the history of this league. And you know what? They still made the semifinals during this little interim stretch where they weren't contending for championships, but they were also still competitive. They, like, Nafisa Collier, when she is 100%, is one of the 5 best players in the WNBA, hands down. End of sentence, end of discussion. What excites me about this team is the spacing and the versatility. So I think to the point about Diamond Miller, who was the number 2 overall pick in the prior draft, not this year's draft, last year's draft, in her second season now, she is going to be on the floor with a team that is completely spaced around her. So you talk about, Myles, her being one of the most dynamic finishers, downhill type of players. Like, she is so good at getting to the basket in these really creative ways. If you have Alana Smith at the 5, Nafisa Collier at the 4, Kayla McBride at the 2, and Courtney Williams at the 1, and Diamond is playing the 3, what do you do? Because I don't want to leave Alana Smith. I probably want to send 2 at Nafisa Collier. Courtney Williams had the best season of her career last year. And I love how you said it, Kdot, like getting back to the Courtney Williams fandom, because like when she was in Connecticut, and again, I want to be conscious of like all the like people who might be subscribing to us here who are just getting into the game, who might not like know all the backstories. Courtney Williams was on the Connecticut Sun, and in 2019, the Connecticut Sun were 1 game away from winning the title. And they lose to Washington, who had at that point the best offense in the history of this league statistically. And Jonquel Jones was on Connecticut back then, and was just dominant. Courtney Williams was as shooting guard as you can get. She was like, she's like the picture next to shooting guard in the dictionary. Just buckets, shots, buckets. That was it. But it was great because she was clutch, because she was fearless, and because she was so damn good.
That's what that team needed from her too, for that entire that playoff run. Man, she became a household name. Her and her dad on the sidelines became a household name at that playoff run.
Exactly. Her dad, shout out to her dad, amazing supporter, always courtside, like bringing the energy. It was great. They needed her at the 2. Last year, Courtney Williams is on the Chicago Sky, and all of a sudden, the Chicago Sky see in her potential at the point guard position, which a lot of us, I think, met with a little bit of skepticism, because the Courtney Williams we know does not like to pass. And that's okay, because she's so damn good at scoring. And like you said, Myles, Connecticut needed that from her. They had Jasmine Thomas. They had the point guard. Chicago said, hey, we kind of need a point guard, and we think you can do it. And that was pretty cool, because in my opinion, Courtney Williams had the best, at least the most certainly the most well-rounded season of her career last year. You could make a case it was the best season. You could also make a case 2019 was. I don't really care to debate it. It was apples and oranges. But you don't see transformations that big from a player very often. And then Minnesota, the one criticism that I think is very valid to make of what Cheryl Reeve has done from a front office perspective the last few years is she kept entering the season without a real point guard and trying to pigeonhole players who weren't point guards into the point guard position. Tiffany Mitchell, a great wing, such a solid role player off the bench, not a point guard. And we saw this time and again, and then she'd sign a point guard. Laisha Clarendon would come in, or Mariah Jefferson would come in, but it took too long. It's like, why aren't you starting the season being like, hey, arguably one of, if not the most important position on the floor, we might want to just have that set from the jump. And they did. They saw what Courtney Williams did last year from a distribution perspective, from a selfless point guard, getting everyone involved perspective, which is scary because Courtney's still a bucket. So it's like now when you have to guard against her passing, and oh, by the way, she's still a bucket. And now you've got this super spacey lineup around her and a really dynamic young talent in Diamond Miller. And then the last player I want to mention here is Bridget Carleton, who's just quietly part of this team for like half a decade now. Bridget Carleton is another player who you can bring in off the bench and she will hit threes. She will play tough defense. She can play the 4. She can play the 3. Versatility, spacing, shooting, defense. This team is built around a superstar in Nafisa Collier. And now all of a sudden it's like, yo, they kind of have the pieces to hang with anyone. I am so excited once we get into the real like rhythm of the season to watch Minnesota against New York, Connecticut, Las Vegas. We saw them against Seattle, but Seattle, once Seattle starts to gel and figures it out, because they will. I'm not worried about Seattle. But I just couldn't be more excited about where Minnesota is going. It's like, I love a team that just has so many options in terms of the lineups they can play, in terms of, do we want to go shooting? Do we want to go big? Like they just, and almost everyone defends on that team. It's going to be fun to watch them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And just one more point on Courtney is she also shot 44% from 3 last year and really added that to her game on over one make a night. So that was really big just for her development. And yeah, the fact that she is the best mid-range shooter on the pull-up jump shot in the W, where obviously there are some like high post, like Asia Wilson, I don't think has ever missed a mid-range jump shot. But in terms of stepping in transition, she just goes against all of your training as a defender when you're trying to back up and play that 2-on-1, and she's just getting to her spot and pulling up that elbow jumper. So yeah, shout out to Courtney Williams, that Minnesota Lynx team who has started 0-4, 0-4, and 0-7 last year for their last 3 years. So to start 2-0, and those are all year they made the playoffs, what, 2 out of 3 of those years anyway.
Right.
So
like, what happened? You know what happened? They were like, oh shit, we don't have a point guard. We should go get one. And then they started winning.
Exactly.
It's wild what happens when you enter training camp with a plan and with a point guard. It's beautiful. I love it. This has been episode 1 of Step Back with Myles and Owen and Kdot. This is so fun. We're going to talk about a lot of the other teams. We're not leaving out Vegas, the ring ceremony. I want to do a whole episode on Vegas. There's a lot to discuss, but I think the reason I didn't want to start with them is we don't have a whole lot to talk about yet. Like they just grinded out some wins. They don't have their point guard. We're gonna get to all of it. Don't worry. But I like that we went with some of the teams in the bottom half of the league and then some of the under discussed teams like Minnesota. Just so much cool stuff going on. But we're gonna get to everyone. We might have to do a full episode just breaking down Kaz 38 points. Because I'm sorry, my fave is out here eating in Phoenix.
And not to mention your fave is not only out here eating, but your fave is out here shouting you out. Like, come on, we're gonna forget about that?
Just for responding in all caps to the performance.
Like,
I love it. That made my week. That was beautiful. I love, my favorite thing about that tweet. Maybe we'll have to put it up so people can know what we're talking about. But a lot of people a couple people responded to it. They're like, I don't even know what she's referring to, but I love this. I was like, all she's referring to is the fact that I'm just live tweeting her games in just all caps, just being like extremely excited as a fan. That's all it is.
And no disrespect to Cobb, but that did not make your week. On Tuesday, which we did not talk about, you met Juju Watkins wearing a Juju Watkins shirt. And we might have to put that picture up also.
Yeah.
So yeah, sure. You had a hell of a first week of the WNBA season.
It's been a pretty good week. I can't lie. Very, very thankful, grateful, all of it. And it's exciting to be doing this with you guys. Like I'm just beaming because this was so fun. Like this is easy for us. Like this is like what we do every day, just talking about hoops and the excitement and the passion. So we hope that shines through. Tell your friends. Tell your family, tell everyone, subscribe to the Patreon. all that. We're gonna be back. We're gonna be back with more episodes. We're gonna be trying some other episodes that are less like basketball centric, that are a little more questions about where the league is going. Like what how do we feel about this wild growth that we're seeing that is like rapid, that is happening so quickly, and the overwhelming pros of that, but also there are some cons and some things to navigate. All that, we're gonna be coming at you with all the content. Kdot, Myles, you guys are the best. Let's get it.